You always put Spraggabenz in front of everything. You just put road trip.
Third person. Normally I come off for the first exit. That's why. No, this one. This is a car 911 scissors. up on the live section.
They might be another one now.
Mm-hmm. nobody not interacting in the chat. Amy. Talking me, you know. Do I come in here in the video? Listen, me I drive at the moment, yeah, so I can't talk to you, yeah? Alright, just hang up, please. Yeah, man, we're up on YouTube, yeah. Yeah, man, listen, I'm driving. I'm up on the motorway. Talk to you later.
How much room you have up there? You don't have no room I rent about now. Up by your mother. Yeah, back to the river. Eh? Remember my brother when me not talk. Yeah, that's why I'm not saying. Yeah, man, I'm alone. Yeah. Okay. Remember, you not tell me say your cousin did it. Okay. You just call me literally a cry. I mean, I don't know where to do because me don't have any house already full up and I'm a center and I mean, I'm not really. Yeah. I may ask him say. So friend and see if the friend can talk to the family them. Okay. Karen, please, me I beg you talk to them and see if they will. Me I beg you. Yeah, man. Me I beg you. If you can help. Yeah. Yeah, man. Alright, so if anything, as soon as you can start to, I make me say back to you. When you reach home, yeah. Alright, darling. Yeah, alright, thanks, yeah? Please make him work out. So, my goodness.
talk to them, say.
Just say hello.
Hello everyone, I'm driving on the motorway, yeah, so I'm concentrating. Okay? You can't get too distracted there. Yo, Tom, big up Tom. Thanks for joining me live, yeah? I'm on the motorway driving, as you can see. It's night. So I can't too look at the screen and see what is written on it. Welcome, Mommy Black, welcome. I'm on the M11 going to London.
The two, if you look at boil it down to religion, there's no real difference.
Sonia, it's so bad. I mean, a lot of people will have the wrong impression about you talking about the Gulf. I mean, I did a bit of work in Manila, in Bahrain, and they past the synagogue, or past a mosque, past a church, and the tolerance there, the level of that is quite surprising. It was surprising to me, but it is there. Thank you so much, Sean. Just run it there because we have to go to the news in a second. Matt says, I think the police officer handled this beautifully. She couldn't have done any better. And sadly, it sounds like they're not integrated into British life, which begs the question, why? Indeed, why, Matt? Let's throw it out to fellow listeners. Why? If you cannot integrate, if you don't think it's integrated sufficiently well, why is that? Because wrong how could we be better integrating people into our common life, if such a thing anymore. I do think, I'll put my little 2 pence in, I think big calls need a looking at. I think it's a very strange thing for the states to be funding people to stay in the bubble of their religion, when you might argue that that is not in our collective interest. And also language, English language provision. It was one of the great shapes the government that I worked for back in the day, when they cut English language provision to lots of people migrating here. I think that was a shame. I think that was short-sighted. But you will have your own views on what we should be doing to integrate people better into the UK. Give me a call, 0345 609 737, comment via Alexa. You're listening to Planet Pages, now see 7:31, time for the news.
US media has identified the man killed by Asians at Donald Trump's Florida resort as Austin Tucker Martin. Investigators say the 21-year-old from North Carolina had been reported missing a few days ago. Ministers say changes to the education system will aim to close the attainment gap between poor migrants and more African peers. They're expected to unveil a new white paper tomorrow. And Team GB have equalled their record medal tally of 5 Olympics with Western Bank and Quad with 5 Stevens closing ceremony. This is quite shortly. LBC weather of clear spells and a scattering of showers this evening, most frequent in the north, the low of 4 degrees.
Build of frontline fortifications, and it wasn't until the next year that Ukraine had enough equipment to even launch a counter-offensive backed by the West, and that failed basically because not all the equipment arrived on time and there wasn't full support given.
So, there on the ground in Kyiv, what is public opinion like when it comes to where people believe they are in terms of the course of this war? Is this, you were sort of in an unidentifiable middle, does it feel like the beginning of the end of the beginning? What do people feel? You know, is it say, well, you know, it might not matter that we have areas where it's whatever 50 to 60% one religion or so on, and as long as we're rubbing along happily. But some might say, well, integration looks more like a more sort of diversity of religions within an area, less concentrated pockets.
Yeah, no, I get it, because you know that number one, this country, this beautiful, beautiful country that we live in, England, Great Britain, number one is not even Christian no more. Do you get what I'm saying? So this country, in my
What
opinion,
are you saying? I don't really, I get your point.
yes, my point what I'm trying to make is that this country has lost its morals, principles and values that a Christian country holds. Like if you look at Romania, you look at like different sort of countries who are actually quite strong Christians and stuff.
Give me some examples, Mohammed, of why you think we've lost our moral compass.
Just stuff like women were not biological women dating men, vice versa. You know what I mean? The stuff they're teaching young kids now in schools and stuff, things like that. These are not Christian values. The Bible doesn't tell you to do things like this. So I think there needs
Someone say that the Bible is rooted in intolerance and kindness and compassion, and what would Jesus do now? How might Jesus respond to difference now? You could argue that. But what's the thrust of your point is that has Britain sort of abandoned its cultural heritage?
Exactly. That's like you worded it perfect for me. You get like even these Muslims who are going around saying, oh no, stop this and that.
Supposed to be right on
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're in a Christian country. You get it? We follow the laws of this land.
So you would like to see a sort of more muscular, more assertive Christianity, and you think that maybe the issue is that people who follow other religions such as Islam or Judaism are more closely interviewed.
People are godless. They got
But
nothing
that's their choice. I mean, we do effectively live in a sort of predominantly secular society, don't we, Mohammed?
You know, I'm saying to you, like a couple days ago, I was in Central London and I see these two teenage boys and they had a t-shirt of Jesus, the portrait of Jesus, and you know what? Their picture had of Jesus in his mouth. He had to join. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And also, very offended. And I went up to the teenagers and I was like, have you lost your mind or something? Do you think this is appropriate? Was this going to talk to you? Do you get it? I was very frustrated. And look at it. I'll tell you again, I'm a Muslim. You know, but the way I hold Jesus in my life, you know, peace be upon him and stuff, you know, they hold him daily. It's very, that's sacred. You know, the Bible, everything, Abrahamic religions and stuff. You know, every religion, you shouldn't make a mockery out of it. But it's the leaders of this country who have become soft. They've pushed this agenda that's brainwashing everyone. And I swear to God, people need to wake up. I'm telling you.
It's not the leaders of the country, is Mohammed. It's just the way that culturally we have progressed, or you might say regressed. You're
Epstein, wherever this person is, in Arabic we call him Dajjal.
What's Epstein got to do with this?
He's a terrible person.
Right? Where are you going, Mohammed? You're onto something, but I'm confused now. Okay, Mohammed, we're just going to leave it there. We're not going to do an hour on Etsy. Lee is in Thurrock in Essex. Hi, Lee. What are your views on this?
Thank you. One thing I was it just proves that people like Boris Johnson, Putin and Trump, it really doesn't matter if you're white, whatever colour you are, if you're horrible, you're horrible.
I'm not sure we should be chucking those three in together as things. Okay, so on the point of this incident that happened, and what do you think that says about integration?
Because, I mean, if you're a football fan, you're not going to go into a pub with the other supporters and start singing your team's name, are you? I mean, because it's going to cause grief. People will get offended with it.
And you could say it was rather un-British of the preacher. Yeah, exactly. And it was sort of un-British of the preacher. I mean, people have made the point before, and I think there is a point there, that actually we have been too sort of supine in the UK about asserting those things that we hold dear, whether they're, I hate that's what it's said, but meaningless.
seems to me that go to Christian churches and things like that. But it's all down to that.
That's certainly a strong trend. Lee, so we're going to have to leave it there just because of time. But keep your call and your text coming in on integration in the UK. Whether you think we're well integrated or not. Maybe you think, look, it doesn't matter. You can have areas where it's predominantly Muslim or Jewish, and that doesn't change the fact that overall this is a very well integrated country. Or maybe you think this is a cause for concern. 0345 606 0973 is the number to call, or WhatsApp. It's 7:46. This is Claire Burgess and LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Prime Minister in office, but not in power.
There's only now a matter of when he goes, not if he goes.
A government that's a bit of a joke and falling flat. But if the government loses a crucial by-election in Gorton and Denton next week, what we all need to do now is drive the pace of change. That means greater unity. Is it time to hand over to Andy? Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7.
while
Listen
driving.
on our free global player app or the LBC app. You want £1 million?
Fast.
So you enter the birthday draw and you think of a way to spend £1 million.
I'd pay off my mortgage and my mum's mortgage.
It's a lucky day and you win the birthday draw. But you forget to pay off those mortgages.
Whoops.
Because you're on a cruise with lots of money.
We're on a cruise, baby.
Is it your lucky day? For your chance to win £1 million, just search the birthday draw and enter now. From Global ITV. 18 plus UK only, no purchase necessary.
Chase is the digital bank that gives you 1% cash back on groceries.
So can I get cash back on cake mix?
Indeed.
And icing?
Yep. And sprinkles.
Sure. And candles?
Yeah. And you can turn all that cash back into a nice birthday treat.
How do you know it's my birthday?
Just a hunch. Get 1% cash back on groceries, fuel, and everyday transport when you spend with Chase. Search Chase Bank. 18 plus UK residents. 1% cash back on this debit card spending for your first year. Maximum £15 per month. Eligibility and exceptions apply. May be changed or withdrawn.
Stop waiting again. Tell me about it. I've spent all morning trying to get through to my GP. Oh, I ditched that stress and joined Benenden Health. We've got 24/7 GP helpline. No waiting rooms, no sitting around. Really? Sounds like a great service. Unlike this one. We're just about to get moving again. Press play on your health. The 24/7 GP helpline and much more. All for less than £16 per person per month. And then periodically. T's and C's are UK only. Visit benenden.co.uk.
This 40-year-old Kathy moved to and self-confessed telly addict.
Oh, look at you. That's brilliant. Well done.
This is also Kathy, working as part of a team to keep things calm at her local prison
Listen, speak to me.
and helping someone's son write his first letter home in 8 months.
Well done. You should be really proud.
Thank you, miss. An extraordinary job done by someone like you. Search prison jobs now.
This is LBC. Message Claire Foges on WhatsApp now. 0345 6060973.
We are taking your calls on integration in the UK. This is after this footage has been circulating of incident this week on the streets of Whitehall. A Christian guy was preaching, an evangelical Christian preaching in a megaphone. Some people walking past. This was near a mosque, incidentally, which has 7,000 worshippers, so not a small mosque. And they said he was saying offensive things about Mecca and so on, and taking the name of the Prophet in vain. So then they called the police over, and she said, "Look, this is freedom of speech. Freedom of speech in this country." And what does this say about integration and how happily things are rubbing along? I wonder how many incidents there are like this that aren't caught on camera, that don't go viral. Maybe you live in a part of the country where it's predominantly one religion or another. What do you think about that? 0345 6060973. What could we be doing to integrate people better in this country, if indeed you think that needs to happen? I think more English language lessons. I think we should be thinking about faith schools and the place they might have in our society. Should we really be funding people to grow up in these bubbles? Should that be funded by the state, that kind of segregation? I think not. 0345 6060973. Back to your calls. Manesh is in Southall in West London. Hi Manesh, what's your thoughts on this?
Right, good evening, Claire. I think all this conversation about integration, I think it starts off with the premise
of how you define integration and how you understand it, and if you can understand the difficulties between positive integration and negative integration and the level of tolerance. Simply speaking, they're not both equal. If a Christian guy from this country was to go to another country and he wants to integrate there, he or she, sorry, you shouldn't have the expectation that the host country are going to put 50% into this to integrate with you. You know, you have to make the effort to integrate, and if you do it in a positive way, you will be successful there. If you do it in a negative way, you will create friction. And it's the same thing like if you think of a country as your house, it's the host and guest theory. That if you're hosting a guest, the guest shouldn't come to your house and expect you to change your ways to be more comfortable for the guest, which is an understandable thing.
But some people now, you know, we're talking potentially about second, third, fourth generation immigrants, and who might feel, you know, they're not a guest in this country because this is their country, and they might just feel that, you know, this is my faith, this is my culture, this is my community. You know, I'm quite happily, you know, I've married someone of my own faith, and I worship where I want to worship, and I prefer my culture to the dominant culture in the UK, maybe the secular culture in the UK. That's sort of what Mohammed, I think, was driving at before. Are they to be blamed for not integrating? Do you think they should be doing more? Are we talking about integration as, you know, people should be happily sort of celebrating Christian mainstream festivals and so on, like Christmas and Easter? You know, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because if you look at the wider picture of the sort of map of integration, and you might say, look, as our guest was saying, you know, the rates of marriage in Bangladesh and Pakistan communities outside of those cultures is still quite low. It's about 4%, which is pretty low. But they might say, look, as an individual, I'm not doing anyone any harm. But then they might be seen as being part of that sort of non-integration problem.
So this is the key issue here. I've been here see some of those teachings, you can see the hierarchy of the court, you can see the measuredness in sentences for crimes, and you realise how much our Christian roots have made our country great. With regards to the idea of accommodating other faiths, I only do that, but I am challenged by the idea of people saying this is a Muslim area. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why I'm challenged. As much as I've had a little taste of the Middle East, and I do enjoy the country, do I know that the freedoms that are afforded to the practice of Islam here are not occurring when you go to those countries? And the idea of being able to say, you know, this is a Christian area, I don't see that as being the case. And often where individuals, probably not those from mainstream Islam, but from some of those more extreme aggressive practices of the faith who are probably also using religion for control rather than for the purity of the faith, they're trying to exert a dominance in the country that we really need to be careful because it will be taking us to places we don't want to go. A very valuable thing is the faith being promoted has you would probably say British values have their source in the Bible. And actually, when we find ourselves, many have spoken about this idea of having pluralism, and we have taken faith element, and that's teaching in our schools. We've been very teaching around things that we don't really see how much they're helping our children's characters. That we're picking up in our society.
Yeah, thank you so much. Last one, Dave. To James and Phil's were coming in. What do you have to say, Reed?
Basically, I think we need to address in a couple of ways. So one way was the guy being provocative on the ground in Whitechapel, probably. Should they have kind of said this is a Muslim area? No, they shouldn't have. So there's a couple of problems that I thought the police also handled the situation perfectly. I'd rather live in a country where we occasionally offend each other and have freedom of speech than be in one where we can't speak openly and have debate and have conversations about the difference of opinion. In regards to integration, I don't think it's just a religious element. I think there's a religious and cultural combination that can sometimes be and racist. However, what you tend to find is, I've noticed the Pakistani Bangladeshi communities that are Muslim, because culturally and religiously, I think they're more insular. They integrate a lot less, and I would say a couple of other communities included in that group also. And so what you find is that because they are insular, it makes integration impossible to some extent. I mean, they will not go somewhere that serves alcohol. They follow it to the word of the culture. I've noticed a lot of Bangladeshis and Pakistanis, they won't go somewhere that serves alcohol. They won't go somewhere that serves pork. And so socially trying to, going, even in a place in London that isn't geared for street culture, even if you wanted to go to, I don't know, like Slight Bar, like these golf places down London, they all serve alcohol. So it wants to make money.
So it makes what you consider to be true integration difficult. Thank you, James. I suppose this is the interesting question here, is whether integration is having to do all the things that other people in the UK may be doing, whether it's going somewhere where they serve pork or alcohol or whatever, or just getting on with your own life happily and not sort of rubbing anyone else up the wrong way. An interesting question. Marge says, I came here in the 70s and didn't require or expect UK nationals to aid my integration. I didn't seek to live in the bubble of my culture, but instead sought to live in an environment in which I had to make the effort to integrate. Some people are too used to being spoon-fed. Thank you for your text, and sort of sorry to those I couldn't get to in this hour. But we've got to go on to the next hour, in which we will be talking about a new policy from the Conservatives. They've announced plans to stop the government funding, this is their government, they're going to stop the government funding dead-end university courses, which are a rip-off which leave graduates with weaker job prospects. I'd love to know your view on this. Do you think that it is about time we recognise that it is not right, either for the nation or for the individuals involved, to do degrees that aren't worth much in the jobs market? It's that their degrees might be covering. Maybe you think this smacks of Oxbridge types looking down their noses at courses that do bring value for some. 560600973.
LBC's US correspondent is Ira Spitzer.
He was apparently missing for a few days, according to his family. So Donald Trump, as well as First Lady Melania Trump, were not in Florida at the time. The president was in Washington, so unclear if this, what the motivations of the perpetrator here were.
Oman's foreign minister has confirmed more talks between Washington and Tehran over the Iranian nuclear program are scheduled for this week. They're due to happen in Geneva on Thursday. And investigations began in Northern Ireland after the discovery of what's being called a viable device at a village in County Londonderry. Security cordons had to be put in place in uplands on Saturday evening. The Education Secretary has told LBC parents shouldn't have to fight so hard to get the educational support their children need. Government reforms to the school system are due to be outlined tomorrow. They include details of special educational needs support, but the Conservatives say they have big concerns about the White Paper. Bridget Phillipson has told LBC change is required.
Parents recognise that what we have isn't working, that when you start talking about change, that can really lead to anxiety. And I hope that when parents read the full shape of what we're setting out tomorrow, they will see that this is all designed to deliver better outcomes for children and a much sharper focus on how we can support children earlier.
A man's due in court tomorrow, charged with murder following a knife attack in East London. The man in his 60s died after being stabbed in Walthamstow on Friday night. Police in Northampton investigating the death of a man stabbed to death at a skate park say he was a 20-year-old called Mason Miller. The attack happened in the Briar Hill area on Wednesday. A 17-year-old was also left in a critical condition. And in sport this evening, Arsenal have extended their lead at the top of the Premier League to 5 points after victory in today's North London derby. They beat Spurs 4-1, and Liverpool got a dramatic late winner to claim a 1-0 victory against Nottingham Forest. LBC weather breezy overnight with a mixture of clear spells and showers, mild with a patchy frost in northern areas, lows of around 5 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Claire Foges.
Good evening, the time is 8:04. This is Claire Foges, with you till 9. Now, we're going to speak this last hour about a subject which has been in the news a lot in recent weeks, hasn't it? About students and university courses, because, of course, the debate about the funding and the sort of rip-off funding around loans, it has been to the fore. Lots of discussion about that in recent weeks. We've all been educated, haven't we, in what Plan 2 student loans are, and the incredible, I was hearing earlier on LBC about someone who started off with 30 grand of debt, and a few years later it's now 60,000 pounds of debt. An awful situation for them, but it does raise the question of what vocation. She didn't want to list examples, quite understandably. She didn't want to list examples of the dead-end courses when she was pressed to do so. Only pointed to creative arts courses. Is she talking about courses like the ones I did? I did a BA in English literature, which you might argue is not vocational at all, learning about Milton and so on. And I did a master's in modern contemporary poetry. So perhaps it's those kind of courses, creative arts courses that Trot is talking about. She says that 75% of the loans that are given out on those creative arts courses are not paid back. Many degrees that hurting job prospects for recent graduates. Now, apparently in the last couple of years, the number of graduates seeking work, seeking sort of graduate level work, has doubled, because you've got all the people from 2024 and 2025 who couldn't get work, joining forces together to find work. They're going through, I was reading today, there's people going for 30, 40, 50 jobs and not getting them. So you might higher education they had, and not only that, they enjoyed probably 3 years at university, developing their social life as well as their critical thinking and so on, having this degree under their belt. And these are just rather elitist types who think we look down on courses from former colleagues and so on, and we don't want people doing them. What counts as a dead-end course to you? Come on, name some courses. What do you think is not really worthy of being done in this day and age, or certainly not something that should be funded by people if it will mean they end up in loads of debt, which they then don't pay off? And do you think it's for the government to decide what is dead-end and what is not? Maybe you feel like, hang on a minute, I did crocheting combined with media studies, and actually this has served me very well, thank you very much, and this taught me things aside from the subject itself. Perhaps you think we do need to face up to the fact that we don't need so many graduates in the UK now. Give me a call, let me know your thoughts. 0345 6060973. WhatsApp me on that number, text me on 84850, or send a comment to LBC via Alexa. Here, Trot defending this plan earlier on LBC, saying the onus is on universities to provide value for money in their courses.
It is incumbent on universities to deliver for the students that they have in them. If they are providing a course for young people to go on, to achieve, to get good jobs, and it isn't high quality, well, that's on them. So I really think it's very important that we're clear today that we are making a choice. As I said, this is controversial. This is not something that everyone will agree with, but I think people are fed up of politicians just pretending that everything is easy and straightforward. We are making a choice. I'm explaining to you why we're making that choice, and it is going to be difficult, but I think it's the right thing to do.
That's Shadow Education Secretary Laura Trott defending the Conservatives' plan to supplement funding dead-end university courses which leave graduates with weaker job prospects. Do you think it's sensible, or do you think it's elitist? 0345 6060973. Send me a text, 84850. We're going to speak now to Robert Halfon, former Conservative MP and Minister for Skills, Apprenticeships and Higher Education, and now Executive Director for Make UK, the trade body for manufacturers. Hello, Rob. So lovely of you to join us this evening.
Good evening, hello.
Good evening. Tell us what you think of the Conservatives' policy on this.
Well, I think the direction of travel is the right one. And I just want to sort of clarify one thing you said. This is not about not sending students to university, because what the Conservatives are saying, and actually something I've been very passionate about, is we want more students to do not just apprenticeships, but higher and degree apprenticeships. If you do a degree apprenticeship, you do have a university experience, although the majority of your time is spent in the workplace. And what we know is that there are too many graduates coming out of university without good skilled jobs. The recent figures from the Centre for Social Justice said there's well over 700,000 graduates who are NEETs. Over 100,000 of those are under the age of 30. Not many more who are getting jobs but not getting skilled jobs. And whereas if you look at an apprentice or a degree apprentice, the average degree apprentice earns about £36,785. That's roughly double the salary of the average traditional graduate at the same stage. That's after 1 year of completion. So I think the problem with the Blair mantra was about university, but it was wrong. What it should have been about was skills. Absolutely, have a traditional university system, but we need to encourage more young people to do apprenticeships as well.
Probably last night.
Who think that this sounds rather aggressive. They're talking about, Laura Trott did say that she would like to close 100,000 university places to alleviate the debt issue. This is not going to be 100,000 people studying PPE at Oxford, is it? It will be working class young people going to their local poly. That's who this will. It will be effectively denying them that opportunity.
So when you say poly, by the way, many of those are really vocational higher end degree apprenticeships. So I don't know the exact figures. I know the figures that I've heard Rob say today. The way that this needs to be done is Students is the regulator. The Office for Students should be looking at all courses that universities provide. It doesn't matter whether it's creative or whether it is science and technology. And they should be assessing whether those individual courses in those individual universities have good completion and good outcomes. Now, maybe in some universities there are some creative degrees that the students come out getting brilliant outcomes. Maybe that in others that is not the case.
By outcomes, you mean the kind of salary they can command when they come out?
By good outcomes, you mean one, they complete the degree, but most importantly, they get a good skilled job when they come out. I also think that we need to rethink higher education in the sense that I think that actually most students should be doing degree apprenticeships. You mentioned that you did an English literature degree. I think that whether it's English literature or science, all degrees should involve a certain amount of time in the workplace, because you also mentioned AI. It's going to have a massive implication on all our jobs. We need to train and retrain throughout our lives. So if you were doing an English literature degree, for example, you might have worked part-time at a publisher's or a museum or whatever it may be. If you're doing a STEM subject, you might be in a laboratory or with a major manufacturer. But we really need to rethink our education system is very similar to when it was when I was at university, although there's been significant change with the introduction of, as I say, of degree apprentices.
Do you think, Robert, you said the Office for Students should be looking at every institution and every degree or course in that institution, which of course they should be. Why are they not being forced to do that already? Why are they so reluctant to do that? Is it because higher education is put on a kind of pedestal? Why are they afraid, or the government, the regulators, confronting them about the value?
It's wires, so we have to cut off thing on my
someone could be studying a STEM subject and getting
so
lots
that we
of
can see
on
through the
track
mirror.
time with tutors
So
and
for
so
me to
on,
look
lots
through
of
the mirror, I
lab
have to do
time,
that.
which presumably is expensive. And yet, you know, kind of
This piece
someone like
today,
me, you know,
it's
studying
Korean
English
bias.
university. I mean, I think I was in a few hours a week. I went to a couple of lectures. That wasn't just me being lazy. There was only a couple of lectures and a couple of tutorials available a week. The rest of the time was my own in the
Yeah, the
library.
piece.
So, why isn't the
Yeah,
regulator
the
on this?
piece. This Korean.
That goes on already. The OFS does look at universities. It's not a regulator in the same way that Ofsted is going directly into the schools, and the OFS do look at the results, but I think it needs to be much tighter and much harder. I think that if there are courses in our universities that have poor outcomes, and as I say, it could be a STEM subject, it could be a creative subject, then that course needs to be stopped, because it is wrong that students will be taking out these big whacking loans and having poor outcomes. And at the same time, the government needs to pivot the system towards, which is what Kemi Baylock is saying, towards a much more focus on skills and apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships. If you take, I went to university, I was only the second person in my family to do so. There wasn't a huge apprenticeship offering that there were in those days than there is now, because now you can do an apprenticeship in everything from aeronautical to zoology, with healthcare, legal, business, policing, you name it, in between. There's over 700 different apprenticeship occupations. So there's a huge variety of choice. And I went to university. Now, my old university, Exeter, is one of the leading traditional universities that is now doing degree apprenticeship. They've done them for 10 years. They do them in engineering, they do them in healthcare, they do them in management and other subjects. An incredibly successful program. And they've got other vocational universities. You might have called former polytechnics. Nottingham-Trent University, the most successful university in the country, has outstanding higher apprenticeship programs. So it's changed, and students are opting to do these things, but we need to put more finances into both higher education and to employers to encourage higher apprenticeships.
Well, I was going to ask about that. Obviously, you are executive director for Make UK, the trade body for manufacturers, but you will know apprenticeships have been talked up. Apprenticeships and the need to stop. I think it used to be called further education, used to be called sort of Cinderella sector or vocational. Obviously, this sort of a lot. I think apprentices are absolutely fantastic for other people's children, but actually for would rather they get a university degree. Do you think that's changing? If it's not changing, how are we to rebrand apprenticeships?
Bus were coming this morning.
I think that's the question. The glass is half full rather than half empty. So there is a huge cultural issue. If I had told my father years ago I was going to an apprenticeship, nowadays he would have said absolutely do an apprenticeship because there are all those right from level 2 right up to level 7, and as I mentioned, many of hundreds of different occupations you can do your apprenticeship in. What really needs to change is, one, there needs to be evangelisation about government, and to be fair, Keir Starmer said a lot about this in his party conference speech last year. Kemi Bateman is saying a lot about it, and Laura Trott, the Shadow Education Secretary, is saying a lot about this. So there is a sea change, but what will also really change is if we transform careers in our schools. And my first, when I was an MP, my first ever speech in Parliament was about trying to encourage teachers to tell their students to do apprenticeships, not just do traditional degrees. So we need to change careers advice. Curriculum. We need to make sure that encourage them and their families, so there's wider understanding in terms of the incredible offerings that apprenticeships can give you. After all, you earn while you learn, you get a skilled job. Over 90% of apprentices complete get a skilled job.
You want to get it this morning,
that have employed them, or they go on to additional education. Degree apprenticeships, well over 85% stay in the company that have given them that apprenticeship. So it's a no-brainer, no loan.
Working drive as well, so
job, and you get the skills that you need and that our country needs.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert Halfon, former Conservative MP and Minister for Skills, Apprenticeships and Higher Education, now Executive Director for Make UK, the trade body for manufacturers. What do you think about this Conservative policy to stop government funding dead-end university courses which leave graduates with weak job prospects? Do you think it's sensible? Do you think it's elitist? So Laura Trott, the Shadow Education Secretary, has understandably not wished to name specific courses, but she does talk about creative arts courses. And it's true, isn't it, that if you do a degree in creative and performing arts, that you are not likely to command a huge salary unless you're suddenly going to be, I don't know, the next Cameron McIntosh or a famous actor or director. But does that mean it has less value? Should we be judging the value of these things on how the sort of salaries people can command? 0345 6060 text 84850. Listening to Claire Photos, now we see the time. It is 8:20.
This is LBC.
Across the country, thousands of drivers are feeling electric about switching to an EV. And here's why. They can go from London to Sheffield on a single charge that could cost around £5. They're ecstatic about that and the exhilarating feeling behind the wheel. Plus, with charging made simple at home, they're always ready for the drive ahead. I can see why they're into it. Switch to an EV and get that electric feeling. Plus, the range dependent on tariffs, model and driving habits. For full details, visit gov.uk/clean energy.
You know that feeling when your money is working for you? No? Well, make it! Open an investment account at XTB, make your first deposit and receive a free Rolls-Royce stock. Rolls-Royce, that's right. Own one of the best performing UK stocks this year for free. And if you like it, you can easily buy more stocks and ETFs with 0% commission. Join XTB and let your money work for you.
Your capital is at risk. Investments above €100,000 are charged a 0.2% commission. FX fees may apply. Limited availability. T's and C's apply.
Really?
Southeastern. We know a bit of good news goes a long way, however big or small it may be. So we wanted to let you know that we're continuing to make improvements across our network. From sprucing up our trains and many of our stations to make your journey nicer, to improving the network to minimise delays, we're investing in making your journey with us better, one step at a time. Find out more at southeasternrailway.co.uk/betterjourneys.
Claire Photos on LBC.
Jean says, what about classics? What value does that have? Unless, of course, it's studied at Oxbridge. Didn't do Boris any harm. Indeed, it didn't, Jean. As I was saying, I don't think that these 100,000 dead-end courses, I don't imagine any of them would be at Oxford or Cambridge or in certain subjects that are highly represented on the green benches. Laura Trott, the Shadow Education Secretary, said she would like to close 100,000 university places, the dead-end university courses, which she said She's pointed to the creative arts courses. I mean, certainly, if you look at the facts I have got here, that creative and performing arts graduates often face the lowest salaries, sometimes around £17,200 to £20,000 in the UK. But one of my producers has just told me that he actually did a performing arts degree himself, and he said, actually, it's not so much the subject matter that matters. It's here is evidence when you go to an employer that I have stuck out a degree for 3 years. And there's something to be said for that, isn't it? You have shown that you can commit yourself to something for 3 years and pass at the end of it. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Do you think there are dead-end university courses? Maybe you think, let's be honest, we don't need people doing courses in performing arts or other creative arts or poetry or whatever it may be. We just don't need people to be doing this, and we actually need to be skewing people, steering people towards the industries where we as a whole might benefit as a nation, and where they as individuals might benefit from better salaries. What are your thoughts?
Yes, guys, thanks for joining my live. I'm gonna sign out now, yeah? I've reached my destination now. I'll see you soon again with my live, alright? Okay, bye.